Hello and welcome to another episode of the CG Garage. This is episode number 426 featuring Lala Gavgavian, who is the president and chief operating officer of Digital Domain. I've known her obviously through my time over there. She's a wonderful person, had a very interesting career. She didn't start in visual effects, but then when she ended up going to ILM many years ago, she ended up doing a lot of talent acquisition. And it was actually through her reviewing artist reels that she started to learn more about how visual effects worked and what was good work, et cetera, et cetera. And it was actually a very interesting education that she had. She's very talented. She definitely knows how to run a company. She's been doing that for a very long time. And when she started at DD, she sort of started to slowly transition to this role, and it's a really great fit for her. And it was really fascinating to talk to her and to see all of the amazing things that she has been able to accomplish. We talk a lot about the industry and then talk about obviously DD, and I got very fascinated to know more about what's going on in their R&D department and how they see themselves moving in the next 10 years. Obviously, the industry is changing a lot. We obviously touch on how AI is going to affect the visual effects industry itself. And we talk also about digital humans. You guys know I have a huge fascination for digital humans and to Digi-Doug. And now, obviously, they have a new digital human called Digi-Zoe. And touched on a little bit about what that is and how that works as well. So really cool to have her on. Very excited to see what's going on over at DD, and it was lovely chatting with her. So hopefully you guys enjoyed the conversation as much as I did. All right, we don't have any product announcements just yet, but we do have a couple of events coming up that maybe you may be interested in. They're both ArcViz events, or architecture events more specifically. June 6th and 9th we will be at AIA in San Francisco. Again, that is June 6th through 9th, and June 11th through the 13th, we will be at NeoCon in Chicago. So if you are going to be attending either of those events, both Chaos and Enscape will be there, and we would love to see you. Okay. Now, in terms of the podcast, if you guys have any ideas for the podcast, we would love to hear from you. Those always are good things. We get lots of great suggestions recently, so keep them coming because I can't always find the guests myself. So any suggestions would be really great. You can always email us. That's the best way to do it. labs@chaos.com is our email. Again, that is labs@chaos.com. But if you want to know more about the podcast or want to follow us, you can always go to our podcast page. That is chaos.com/cggarage. Again, that is chaos.com/cggarage. And you can always watch us on YouTube, which I always highly recommend. It's a lot of fun to see the actual podcast happen. And that is youtube.com/chaosgrouptv. Again, youtube.com/chaosgrouptv. But for now, please enjoy episode number 426 with Lala Gavgavian.
Welcome to another CG Garage, where the Chaos Group talks. You'll know it's over when the last bucket drops. We're gonna fire off rays in high dynamic range. We know that ambient occlusion is passé. Global illumination won't lead you astray. And while image-based lighting is really swell, you need to make sure everything has Fresnel.
Well, Lala, thank you so much. It was awesome seeing you at the VES Awards and to be able to chat. And you said, yeah, sure, I'd love to be on. We'll figure this out after award season, which of course we have to do. But I'm glad we're able to do that now and to be able to talk. Obviously, you're now the global president and COO of Digital Domain. That's absolutely amazing. I've known you for many years, and it's just such a congratulations on taking on such an important role in the company.
Thank you so much.
So I'd love to know a little bit about how that journey started for you. How did you get into visual effects, and what was the path that led you there?
Yeah, it's so parallel with so many people's stories of how we got into VFX in this industry so long ago. This will be my 26th year in the industry. And having worked at only 2 studios in that span of time, starting at ILM and then moving over about 16 years ago to Digital Domain, it's been a journey. It really has. It was accidental how I got into the industry.
Let's hear about that.
The first part of my career, I was really in banking and the financial sector. HR, I dabbled in that, and talent acquisition across the board in some of the banking operations. But, I had made the leap to a quasi-public sector office, which was a fire department up in Marin County in the Bay Area. And that was at a time where I just needed a little more predictability in my schedule and whatnot. And one of the captains said, you aren't made for a quasi-military. This is way too slow of a pace for you. And I want to recommend you over to Industrial Light and Magic. I have my wife as a VP, and I think you would really thrive in that production environment. So he referred me over. I honestly, at the time, didn't even know they existed in San Rafael because they were in such an elusive location. When I showed up to a door, it said Kerner Optical Research Lab, and I was like, wait, am I in the wrong place? I was interviewed for a recruiting coordinator position, and I got hired a little bit later after
What
that.
year was this approximately?
That was in 1997. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, 1997. I think at that time we hadn't started developing the prequels to Star Wars, but everything was analog. I got, the pleasure of looking at and processing paper resumes at that time over faxes and emails and whatnot.
VHS tapes.
And VHS tapes, actually PAL tapes as well, and TSC, coming from abroad. It was a very, very exciting time, though, because I was really learning the industry and the creative and the artistic, and had opportunities to support the recruiters at the time going out to schools and looking at, the CG programs in its infancy and how they were developing, and, everybody trying to understand how to really train a new sort of type of artist for our industry at that time.
But it was a very different time back then. There wasn't that many degrees in visual effects or anything of that nature, right? So you kind of had to find tangential careers and sort of say, what about coming over to making movies, right?
Yes. It's interesting for production. We always looked at, do they have waitressing and customer service experience on their resumes? We always sort of identify the up and coming talent through some other industries that weren't really relevant to ours, but some of those skills learned and the ability to service clients and whatnot were really important. And we found it in folk that were waitresses and waiters. And they were some of the most amazing production coordinators and PAs starting out in the industry. So you're right.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I can imagine. I mean, that was also, was that around that, was Steve Williams still at ILM at that time?
No, I think that was after my time, or before my time. Yeah, before I started.
Right. Because and it was, the ILM was just booming with creative technology just at that time, right? It
was. And really, I don't think there was enough talent locally to really build out the teams in the way we needed. So we had to go abroad, and we really hired and relocated a lot of talent from overseas. Interesting.
What were some of the places that you were identifying some really interesting
the
talent?
UK was a key one because Bournemouth had a really well-established technical program with an artist slant to it as well. So we were really, many of the TDs and lighters all came from Bournemouth. There's a big alumni of ex-ILMers from there,
Yeah, so that's really interesting. So during that time, obviously, you said you didn't really know much about visual effects in the film industry, but you learned about skill sets that were necessary. So how did that sort of enter your education in terms of visual effects and what that was?
Yeah, I learned from the best in the industry, and really it was through reel reviews, working Rob Coleman, who's one of my most favorite animation directors out there. He really was an amazing teacher. We would sit and look at animation reels together once or twice a week to really sort of identify the animation teams for some of the upcoming projects. And he would really talk you through, the 12 principles and really being able, so you can go away and do that first screening and then be able to sort of give and, forward to some of the different supervisors. It was really through the artist ranks and the supervisors that a lot of that education and going to reviews and dailies and just sitting there and absorbing the information was really one of the key ways that I ramped up in the industry.
Sure. So that's really an amazing education, is to see so much work and be exposed to so much work and identifying the qualities that people have, either good or bad, right?
Yes.
So you were part of sort of talent acquisition for a long time, right?
Yes, that really predominantly is my background in the industry. I was a recruiter. I elevated to a recruiter and then a talent manager with the acquisition component. So that's been the crux of my experience in the industry. And then when I started at Digi, that started expanding more into operations and doing a little bit more, looking at spreadsheets, kind of overarching. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's see. When did you start at Digital Domain?
That was in 2007.
2007. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. And so that was right sort of at the start of one of the new transformations of Digital Domain, right?
Yes. I guess I came into version DD 2.0 at the time.
Right.
And, at the time, there were some ILMers and Lucasfilm executives that came over. Kim Library, Cliff Plumer, and Mark Miller. And they were here about a year. And one of their business initiatives was to establish a real-time gaming division to do a game and a feature at the same time with the same assets, workflow, pipeline, with Kim at the helm of that. And they invited me and asked me to come over to help build out those teams for that division at the time. And it's really fascinating because I think Kim was a little ahead of the curve at that time in terms of the vision for real-time workflows and whatnot. But I had left Lucasfilm Animation actually because I had gone up there to help build out those teams to come here and help them establish that new division.
Yeah. That's an interesting thing. That was right after Speed Racer, right? That
it was,
happened, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, interesting. Well, I find it really, you've seen obviously a lot of transformations in Digital Domain and the industry in general, and especially in the last, 15, 16 years. What are your thoughts on some of those transformations and how the industry has changed?
Yeah, oh my gosh, the industry's changed so much. We used to all be under one roof in a studio at any given studio, and your entire population was right there. And just over the years, it's evolved to globalize, whereas these studios, in order to scale and being able to capture all the talent globally, they've established multiple locations. That's really been, in what I've seen, the biggest transformation, whereas our VFX studios historically have always been hunkered down in one location, absorbing that culture, talent, and whatnot. So that's been huge. And for us at DD, of course, we were kind of the first mainstream studio to be into Vancouver at that time for being our first new location. So I got to be a part of that transformation as well and helping build out Vancouver, which was exciting.
Yeah. What was your thoughts on that during the sort of building out the different studios? Did you try very hard to try to create a single culture, or did you feel that each location needed to develop their own culture and their own feelings?
Yeah, you know what? We tried to make sure the DD DNA was infused in any location we were at, but of course we wanted to respect the local cultures and whatnot as well. And really, like for Vancouver in the beginning, the talent base was minimal there in terms of, high-end VFX talent because they all lived somewhere else. So over time, that pool of talent really started establishing themselves and anchoring themselves in Vancouver. So that in itself was a cultural change for the location. For us at DD, we definitely, we actually sent over some longtime folk here to infuse, the methodologies and workflow and philosophies to make sure we wouldn't lose that. And we're not looking to create a whole new company. It's still DD wherever you are.
Yeah, and like you said, you've established we had established that different locations for many times when I was at DD with you, and it was interesting that we all saw that as like the infrastructure behind it all seemed uniform in some ways, which was a pretty big challenge, right?
Yes.
But that challenge, I think, benefited the company in the end because when it came to, when the pandemic happened, everything was already established that way, right?
Oh, yes. Actually, the irony is with the pandemic, it's really benefited us in terms of removing the boundaries as well as the borders, So right now our teams and the way we do our work distribution with our locations, we distribute each project to all the locations versus each location just being four-walled on a project. So having the cross utilization of the teams, and with the pandemic, the work from home, Zoom, all the new ways of communicating really alleviated the need for physical travel to be with your teams in person. But two, it's sort of like you're not in Vancouver, you're not in LA, you're just on the monitor working together as a unified team. It really, that was one of the positives actually for us being able
Absolutely.
to establish that work from home paradigm.
Absolutely. But how did that affect, if anyone can work from anywhere, the old methodologies were based on tax subsidies in order to try to get those. So how does someone working out of Indiana, how does that work in terms of tax subsidies?
Well, I mean, those are still important. And,
Sure.
We're lucky to have a really large footprint and are tax rebatable. And, for these projects, it's not 100% tax rebatable. It's a portion of it. So we're able to manage that, at least through the way we bid and distribute the work. And for us, it's about the talent at the end of the day. And with this work from home, it has allowed us to have access to talent. Historically, we haven't been able to due to visa constraints or relocation challenges and whatnot. And we embrace that actually. So we've been able to have little pods of teams all over.
Yeah, I think that's really cool. And I definitely know that, I've spoken to I have a lot of friends still at Digital Domain, as you are well aware. And so they seem very much to enjoy the fact that they can work from home in a lot of ways, or they can work at different locations if they wanted to. What have been the biggest challenges do you feel from that process?
From the work from home? It's, I think with the newer employees coming on and perhaps the more junior talent coming on, it's been probably a little more difficult for them to integrate. The more seasoned talent, the folk that have a lot of experience, and honestly, we're not a huge industry, so a lot of people have relationships already in shorthands. It's plug and play. They're able to come in and start working on a team. Whereas the brand new talent out of schools and whatnot, we do need to put some extra effort into integration into the teams and ramping up and whatnot. So, in those instances, we do have teams come and work on site for that orientation and whatnot to make sure, everyone's sort of getting all the love they need in terms of being able to execute on their day-to-day.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So, with the amount of experience that you've had, you have seen a lot of different things. You've seen the ebbs and flows of the industry over the years and how it's, you have this, this balance of work and how much work you have, and, work goes down, work goes up. And currently, obviously there's challenges that are happening across the industry. How do you sort of hunker down for some of those more rocky periods in the visual effects industry?
Yeah, the cyclical is what you're referring to. Well, we've been very fortunate. So post-pandemic, there's been sort of a VFX boom of content, all these studios really pushing out as much as they can, which I think everybody has benefited from, small studios, large studios. And now there's a little bit of a market correction happening in regards to that. For us at DD, because we're not a mammoth studio in terms of our size and really how we get our work done as well, we're able to sort of move through those times in a more, our ebbs and flows aren't these big swings. We're able to be a little more moderate in terms of, our ramp ups and ramp downs. So while of course, nobody's immune to the market and the industry, we're not impacted in that big significant way as some studios are and have been recently. So we just look at we're always projecting out a couple cycles ahead and sorting out, those bids and what that work distribution will be, and making adjustments along the way in that regard.
Yeah, I gotta say, I was at DD during one of the most challenging times during the bankruptcy, and I was so impressed with how they handled that, considering what was going through, and very open about what was happening at that time. We never missed a paycheck. And it was kind of this incredible thing that I was like, you say what you will about the controversy of of some of that stuff. Never missed a paycheck, and the company is still thriving. So I think that's really sort of a wonderful thing that's happened. And then, it was like, if there's one place, if things are stormy, I'd be comfortable at Digital Domain.
It's absolutely true. I think we are a little more conservative in our approach and our growth plans and whatnot for this exact reason.
Yeah, for sure. Well, let's talk a little bit about the state of visual effect, because I think, besides obviously the ebbs and flows of things, things have changed in terms of the types of content that we make, right? I mean, when I was there, we just looked at the big summer blockbusters that were going to happen, and we'd ramp up for all those summer blockbusters. But the type of work that's happening now is it's not just that summer blockbuster cycle anymore, right? It's episodic, it's all times of years, it's different scales. How has that sort of changed the way that you guys pursue the work that you're looking for?
Yeah, what's really cool about DD is we have different business verticals here. So of course we have our features group, and episodics really goes through our features pipeline, but we also have our commercial, advertising, and new media teams, as well as a really robust pre-visualization and visualization department. And of course we have our mocap stages. This actually allows us to really pursue diverse revenue and clients and work that kind of fits into all these different biz verticals, technologies, talent base. And from time to time, we can actually converge multiple projects and teams together. So for instance, if we're doing episodic, we have opportunity to do the promo for that. That goes through our commercials, and we're sort of sharing assets and whatnot. So it's really allowed us to be a little more diverse and not so pigeonholed in one medium or platform in our, execution of revenue here.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm very curious actually about commercials. I mean, I was always used to I did a lot of commercials myself. This is during my time when I was not at DD, and DD was always like top of the commercial zone. But commercials used to be very, very expensive, and there'd be big commercials that are always on TV. And today the state of commercials has changed quite a bit, obviously with the way that social media is happening and everything else. How are you guys sort of diversifying yourself in terms of commercial work for stuff beyond television?
Yeah, so commercials has drastically changed. And I really don't come from that world, but having started at DD, we had a very robust commercials division, a traditional group in terms of car commercials and whatnot, and all of that has really evolved over the years. Our commercials team is a Swiss Army knife, and it still is, and they work very closely with the other sectors of the business in pursuing clients jointly. The metaverse and all these sort of new platforms and mediums, they're really at the forefront of that and pursuing opportunities in that space as well, because so much of the talent, skill, abilities, and innovations that don't fit into a mold of how you get a features done can be executed through those teams and talents and technologies, actually. So we've done a lot of cinematic work, which historically, wasn't really part of commercials, but we have a lot of cinematic work moving through there, as well as game-centric opportunities. Like last year, we finished a really large game that's doing well out there in terms of the facial capture, which is the Quarry, which happened through our new media team plus commercials combined.
Okay. Yeah. Well, that's interesting. And I'd actually, I want to talk a little bit about, I may go back and forth a little bit, but I do want to talk about Digital Domain's R&D department, because Digital Domain had, it was one of the early studios, visual effects studios that were focused on computers. And there was always R&D that was involved at DD back in those days by necessity, because there was no other ways of buying tools. You had to make your own, right? But that tradition has continued for a long time, and it still continues to this day. I want to start with something that I know about that you guys have done, and then sort of ask you about more ones. But I want to start with digital humans. And the kind of area that you guys have been focusing. You guys have had a specific area of research in digital humans for many, many, many years now. Where did that start from, and where is it going now?
Yeah, well, it started a long time ago, even before I was here. But
with buttons, right?
yes, even before that, right? Some of the commercial work that we had done, but
Sure.
it really took root when actually Darren Hendler and Doug Roble really made this pitch to establish a standalone digital human group R&D team, really to
Right.
sort of investigate, prototype, and develop new techniques and innovations that are independent of a project. Because oftentimes we would do some of this R&D tethered to a project we needed to execute on. And so Darren was a very convincing fellow and went to our CEO, Daniel Say, and really proposed this. And that was back, I believe, in 2018 that we established a full-on R&D team, a carve-out from the regular software engineering team, only focused on facial digital human technologies. That's really grown since then, and now we have product teams established in the hierarchy. We've developed so much, and we've used so much in our work. We have a lot of machine learning specific technologies. Charlatan is one of our proprietary tools that we've applied to on multiple projects. She-Hulk being one. Masquerade 2.0 is actually another really key proprietary tool that is some of the best tech on the market right now that we use on all of our facial shows. So we've had a lot of inroads in that regard.
Can you give me a bit of an outline of what some of those tools are and what do they do?
Yeah. So, I may not be the best person to get deep dive into the technologies.
A general overview.
We do. We have Charlatan, which is our machine learning technology that we use in terms of, there's a spot that just came out soon that will be coming out soon that showcases it really well that we'll share with you in the future. But we have Charlatan, we have Masquerade. Some of our sort of digital human SMEAT is our muscle system that we use. Samson, of course, is our hair and groom system that's proprietary to us as well. I think those are sort of the key ones that we've been using. We've been developing the markerless trackers for Masquerade, which is really exciting. But if I knew you were going to ask me this question, I would have brought my cheat sheet.
That's okay. That's okay. In fact, what we should do is, we should have someone from the Digital Human Group on.
Actually, that would be wonderful.
I can get more geeky with them. But I just wanted to get an idea. I know that there's definitely some pretty incredible tools out there. And like you mentioned, you said you guys have been using machine learning technology to train these systems and for years, right?
Yes.
You've been doing this since 2018, 2019. You've been looking at machine learning, right?
Yes. And it's only, we're developing it faster and faster at this time. So it's definitely, I know it's the AI and whatnot is the new craze right now, but we have been working in that for a while. Yeah.
Yeah, it was interesting because I had a conversation with Deke not long ago about this, and I was asking him about what Digital Domain is thinking about AI. And what's interesting about the way that he put it is a lot of places I've seen there's like, oh, we're scared how it's going to disrupt this and that, and he's like, well, we've been using it for a long time, so we're not really scared of it.
Yeah, it's true. And in fact, it's really just yet another tool to enhance, right? And allowing, especially in some of the traditional workflows, if there's opportunities to sort of automate things that allow the artist to spend more time on that final image up on the screen, so they're not doing all the, tchotchke kind of setup and whatnot, to eliminate that for them so they can just focus full time on more versions of a shot. I think that would be the end goal on that. So it's never going to replace talent in the way we know it. I can't see that happening.
Sure. Do you have, I believe you, I'm totally with you. Do you feel that there's a way to sort of illustrate that better, to say, hey, look at the things I've done and the talent that's behind it is still done by humans?
Is there a way to illustrate that? I think you could probably do comparisons, right? In terms of a final shot in our language, have it go through an AI machine versus with no human touch really, and then have one, and I think you would see a big difference in that final result.
Yeah, I agree. And I think this is interesting, especially with your background in talent acquisition. You know that the talent is more important than the tools, right?
It is. The tools are just, another brush, another pen, another pencil. And it really comes down to that individual. The aesthetics are, people drive that. It's hard for that just to be spit out of a machine on its own.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. Do you see a lot of obviously you guys have, like I said, we've done a lot of work on digital humans, and therefore you're getting interesting work with digital humans such as She-Hulk, et cetera. Do you see a certain way that what's happening in the industry is sort of dictating or driving some of your technology or research? Like, we should do more research in this area because we see trends in that area.
Oh, yeah, most definitely. And actually, that's always been our inspirations for the digital human technologies. It's really seeing the projects. The projects inspire the technology, and then all the different research and new opportunities out there do so as well. So we definitely we have a whole team. I mean, Jason within the group, he's always out there. He's reading papers and, turning over every rock on all the new things happening. He's usually 3, 4, 5 months ahead of all the trades and articles of all the new things happening because he's researching all day long. But we definitely are inspired by the different trends that are happening. But at the same time, we're also improving the existing ones, and the ones that historically just, again, to being able to make the best digital human, the fidelity of it, moving past the uncanny valley, all those things, the historical challenges that come with trying to create a virtual human.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. What I also find interesting is that there's a trend, and especially in with the AI going on, people are sort of freaking out in some ways. Not necessarily that the AI is doing what it's doing, but also that if we don't do something in this area, there's going to be some FOMO, right? So like we're not going to be part of it. Do you find that that's sort of a good way to go, or is it better to just chart your own course and just use the tools as they're necessary?
Well, I guess it's all relevant to your business model, right? At the end of the day, in terms of how you would use those applications, I don't think we can ignore it. I don't think we can sort of just assume it's a little bit of a trend coming and going, because I do think it's here to stay. But again, I do see it being a opportunity to enhance all business models as a tool, as an additional tool, to really elevate everything you're doing and accelerate things you're trying to develop that perhaps would take much longer periods of time. And also, reduce the need for all of the really those little tasks that can be freed up so you can focus on the meat of a problem and get that result sooner.
Yeah, I agree. I think that there's going to be AI tools that can develop all kinds of things, including bidding. You can probably help out with bidding.
If only.
It's a challenging task.
Yeah, it really is. I have all admiration for all bidding producers. It's a very difficult.
Oh my God! When I was a VFX supervisor, it was partially one of my favorite things to do, because that's when you get to make some creative decisions or proposals, shall we say? Yeah. But at the same time, it's so much work.
Yeah, it really is. But I've learned over the years, like, no shot is the same at the end of the day. Even though it may look the same, it really isn't. So bidding is a unique skill, and again, I have full admiration for everyone who knows how to do it between supervisors and producers. Yeah.
Right. Now, someone who's had to obviously deal with the studios for many years, like, such as Fox and Sony and Paramount and Disney and Marvel, et cetera, with the advent of streaming networks, what have been some of the biggest changes in terms of you dealing with them and bidding with them and relationships you develop with some of these streaming platforms?
Yeah. So, it hasn't really, the approach, the dialogue, all of it isn't really different to the features side, at least with the clients that we work with and the streaming projects that we work on. It's in our approach, it's sort of looking at the work, and, timeframes aren't that different really than the features. So it really, we truncate it. We don't have a whole separate episodic division, and client base. And on the client side, the teams, there's still that one executive, whether it's features or episodic, really in charge of the distribution of that work. So the conversations are usually very similar to how we pursue features projects. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I'd say that sounds about right. What about, but you also mentioned, obviously, you talked about the metaverse, and I sort of want to piggyback on that specifically, not specifically metaverse, but you're always trying to look at the next thing. And you mentioned this with the commercial group. They're always looking at where the next trend is going to be and how that's going to address things. Mm-hmm. What are some of the trends that you guys are looking at right now that you feel are going to be big and you guys need to get involved, like the metaverse as an example?
Yeah, so we haven't really done a whole lot with the metaverse. We've had a lot of conversations. Many of, the mainstream ones, Decentraland, Sandbox, whatnot, have approached us to, understand our technologies and the side of the business and how that can translate into their worlds and whatnot. So we've had a lot of dialogue. It's hard to see because the metaverse it's until there's a time where the fidelity and level of what comes out of our industry can be transported and supported within those worlds, it's a little bit of a ways off right now. For us, really, some of the really cool technologies we've been developing that could be cross-utilized would be in kind of markets that maybe aren't as sexy, the medical field.
Sure.
So some of the different markets out there that have parallels and they need, new training opportunities for their doctors and whatnot, where our technologies can really help support those endeavors is sort of some of the things that we're looking at right now. So
that's interesting.
yeah. It's a big market, and there, of course, the virtual concierge and, all different sort of industries that are utilizing. There's a lot of virtual influencer opportunities out there and whatnot, but we really are looking at things, in sectors that we traditionally wouldn't work with historically.
Sure.
Yeah.
Absolutely. But also I was curious about, obviously you talked about your previs and your stages as well. Mm-hmm. And you mentioned earlier about going real time and when Kim Library was trying to develop the game and a movie at the same time. Yeah. Do you feel that there is now is the magical moment where you can sort of cross between real time and feature level offline rendering?
Yeah, I actually think the opportunity just needs to be there. I think part of the challenge historically was the technology maybe wasn't completely there yet, but I also think the talent base wasn't there either to know how to execute in real time. There's a much bigger pool of talent thanks to Epic, in terms of, a lot more Unreal Engine artists out there that are executing in it in all different mediums, including our industry. So I think it's happened already, right? In some sort of shorts and whatnot. I was watching a short the other day that was done all in Unreal, and it was mind-blowing. It was really beautiful, engaging, and it's like, wow, you could do a whole feature like this. It was really interesting.
Yeah, I think to some extent that's true. I think I have my own feelings as well in terms of the ray tracing pipeline, but I'm not going to get into that geeky stuff just yet. But I do think it's true that there's a way to sort of leverage real time rendering and high quality rendering at the same time. Do you feel that you are starting to have, because of the way that you interact with the virtual production group, the assets that you're getting from art departments, do you feel them suddenly you're starting to get more assets that have an origin in the art department as opposed to just a sketch saying, here, make this?
Yes, absolutely. Especially sometimes through the post-viz process as well.
Right.
We've actually done a few projects now where we've repurpose some of the assets that were developed through the virtual production process into our, VFX pipeline and using them. Of course, they need to be enhanced more and whatnot, and sometimes they change along the way before that show delivers. But yes, there is synergies there that can be utilized and optimized actually to kind of bring those teams closer together.
Absolutely. I have a question. Obviously, we mentioned obviously the metaverse, but in general, do you feel? What do you think about Web3 and how Web3 may affect the kind of work or demands that you guys are working on?
For us, it's hard to tell. Again, we've had a lot of conversations with, startups, but also established companies really exploring that platform and opportunities. And it's, we kind of put all our cards on the table, do our demos, show them our technologies, and then it's a kind of a little bit of a dialogue on how things can be cross-utilized over into that world. It's still a TBD. It's still hard to sort of see. Because the truth is our technologies are so robust and so big, it's hard to dumb them down, which is a horrible word, but, to be able to be transportable into platforms that you may not need that such robust, it's overkill almost.
Absolutely.
For that type of content.
I get it.
Yeah.
But I do. Okay, let's talk about one of your big ones. That is a big, robust, and very important area of research you did. So about Digi-Doug, right? So,
yeah.
Digi-Doug was, it seemed almost way too early to have him, because now with the advent of the big push in AI, Digi-Doug can start to really have a much bigger life beyond that. Is that something that you guys have envisioned? Him having a bigger role in the company.
Yeah. So, what's interesting is, because of course, Doug departed us for Meta, a couple years ago, but upon his departure, we actually created Zoe. So Digi-Zoe is our new autonomous virtual human.
Oh, wonderful.
And she is far more advanced than what Digi-Doug was in terms of her capabilities. And so we are still continuing developing our autonomous virtual human. And we have some upcoming potential opportunities in terms of showcasing her in different ways. But yes, we haven't abandoned that. We are actually improving on it, which those learnings get cross-utilized into our actually feature side for the look dev, for the different things that go into her. We actually then are able to carve that out and implement those in some different workflows and technologies utilized for the day-to-day or service side of the business as well.
And are you seeing a lot of demand for digital humans still, or more demand for digital humans in the content you're making?
We are, yes, we are. We have a few upcoming projects that are using that. So it doesn't, and for Digi-Doubles, the virtual humans seem to always be a necessary part of a pipeline. Sure. And projects, especially for some of our big action-oriented projects that we work on. So yeah, I don't think that's going away anytime soon.
And what's been Didi's position? I remember, before the pandemic, I had been invited to many a panel to discuss the concerns about digital humans, and it was concerns over deep fakes in elections, and then it turns out that we didn't really need deep fakes to. Yeah. It didn't do anything in the election, and then there was also concerns about digital humans. I was on a panel for SAG-AFTRA concerned about digital humans affecting the livelihood of actors. What is your take on that, and how is the position on how actors and their Digi-Doubles could commingle, shall we say?
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. It's like an ethical question as well, right?
Yeah.
I think for actors and talent, I don't know that Digi-Doubles will ever really replace them. No different than I don't think AI will ever replace an artist's ability to, bring something to life in aesthetically and visually. But I do think that any person outside of actors, actresses, me, you, it is something to be aware of in terms of how your image can be used, or any proprietary function of yourself out there. So it seems there's like a whole new law book that needs to be written in regards to protecting those rights and how you obtain them as well, legally, and everything's above board and there's sign off, etc. So I know for us, anytime we engage in a client, there's a lot of due diligence in terms of making sure they have the rights to particular things. I mean, there's a lot of sign-offs in that regards before we even engage. And we've actually even said no to certain projects that don't really necessarily fit into our philosophy as a company in terms of how that digital virtual human would be utilized and showcased out into the world.
I remember when Didi was at the forefront of that controversy or discussion with Tupac, and I was still at Didi at the time, and there was very specific ways that we felt comfortable working on that project. It was with permission from the family, respect from Dre and from Snoop. So it was really kind of a big deal, right? Yeah,
it's really important because, you know, your thumbprint ends up being on that final content, and it has to align with your ethics as well, you know, as a company.
Yeah. I mean, I know that a lot of companies that are doing AI have a sort of involved specific people that are working on the ethics of what they're doing. Is that something that you guys are considering more generally, or do you have like specific ethic departments to work on some of those things?
Yeah, we don't actually have a formal ethics department, but we certainly have internal. When a project is approached or an idea has come forth, we do for sure. It does escalate to the executive team with our legal department, and we have roundtable discussions on it in terms of, does this make sense for us all in? So there isn't a formal ethics group, but it is something that everyone is aware, every single, you know, salesperson here, every single producer, supervisor, before we just say yes to anything, we do evaluate it closely first.
Yeah. I'm glad to hear that. That's kind of what I experienced as well. But it is really amazing. I mean, that I remember Buttons, and I know some of the old digital humans that were done there, but Buttons was for the first time I was like, my God, DD cracked the code, and that was in 2007. So it was pretty impressive back then, for sure. Okay, I'd love to know a little bit more. Like obviously, where do you see Digital Domain in like 10 years and 15 years from now? Like, where do you see the growth that's happening that you guys are trying to develop at this point?
Yeah, you know, I think we're not looking to be the Costco of visual effects. I can't see us being that company in 10 years. But we do want to work on high quality work here for the VFX side that helps push our talent as well as our technologies forward. So we will continue to endeavor that and have close partnerships with our clients in that regard, bringing amazing visuals to the screen, you know, and being that core business will always be there and invigorated and improving, you know, with every project that we do. I think outside of that, we are looking at our digital human technologies and how those can sort of immerse in different markets like we discussed, and really pushing our R&D efforts forward a little more in a robust way. Because as you know, Didi, we haven't, you know, if you compare us to any of our competitors, we're probably one of the smallest sort of companies that produce equal type of work at the end of the day. Right. So we are looking to build out some of those teams and whatnot for the future for these new markets and immersing technologies such as, you know, the metaverse and virtual production, real-time workflows, et cetera, to be able to really embrace that and be a key player in that space.
Well, awesome. That's really great. Well, Tivis, I know you can't, this is always the problem. You can't tell us about stuff you're working on currently, but can you give us some hints of some of the things we can look forward to in the near future?
Oh, we're working on a super cool project right now. I can tell you who the supervisor is on it, Matthew Butler. He's Matthew, actually on the client side, you know, but he's still part of DD, and we're working on his project, which is going to be a super, super interesting, different type of project than what we've seen historically with the cycle of VFX-centric features coming out. Yeah, so we're really excited about that one. But we have a big bunch of work we're working on right now, and will be released this year and next year.
Awesome. Well, then I'll have to get in touch with Matthew and ask him all about this project.
He just got back from onset, so he's available.
Oh, perfect. That sounds great. Well, thank you so much for being on. It's so wonderful to see you. And again, it was great to see you at the VS Awards. And I really hope that, you know, we can really look forward to some of the amazing work you guys are doing. Digital Domain is a very important part. of the visual effects industry, and obviously a big part of my life, right? So this is very important to me.
Well, we miss you
A
still.
lot of DD people have come through this podcast, and so it's really kind of cool to have you on as well to sort of let us know what's going on right now.
Thank you so much for this opportunity. It was really a pleasure to catch up with you, and we do miss you here at DD. So there is a long seat.
Oh, that's sweet. Thank you so much.